politician. Well, hello, everybody. You have found another episode of the Webinar Talk Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I think today is going to be one of those shows where you're going to be wowed with what we're going to talk about and our guest. So my name is Tom Singer.
And I'm Eliz Green, and we're really dedicated, especially this season, our third season, to bringing you guests who are going to help you communicate your value, get more customers, make more sales, keep more of your members. That's our goal this time around. And I know I say this every time, but we really do have a wow guest today.
We do. We have Meridith Elliott Powell. Now, Meridith is somebody who we know through the National Speakers Association. And just almost exactly a year ago, I saw her do a keynote at the winter conference for NSA that had to have been one of the best presentations I've ever seen, and I'm hypercritical of speakers. She was fantastic. So
we're all kind of snobby.
That is true. Ask speakers about speakers and fasten your seatbelt, because they'll have a lot of opinions. But my opinion of her keynote was it not only was presented in a way that was engaging, but I took like an entire notebook full of notes because Meridith is a business growth specialist. And that's not just something she calls herself. That's what she has been doing for her clients for over a decade. She has been helping companies really dive in and see what it is that makes them grow. So she is high energy. She is smart. She is creative. She is fun. And here's something about her. She's my birthday buddy. You know what a birthday buddy is? That is someone who shares your same birthday, not necessarily the same year, but we share the same birthday. And every year at the NSA conference, we get together. And even though it's 2 months past our June 8th birthday, we have a gin and tonic to celebrate another year around the sun. So today on the Webinar Talk Show, please welcome Meridith Elliott Powell.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest things about COVID was missing that in-person gin and tonic with you this year, Tom.
That's right. I was thinking about that the other day. Now you have to buy me 2.
Just so you all know, I do the buying because I'm older.
That's right. That is exactly right.
But so, by what? Minutes?
No. I think I got a few years on them, unfortunately.
So you look younger, and you certainly have a more vivacious young personality than I do. So anyway, today, Meridith, we invited you here because we want to talk about how do you communicate your value in sales and beyond. And one of the things you've done is you're releasing a book based on a study that you've done of some companies that date back to the early 1900s and as far back as I think the 1700s, you're showing people how you can actually take uncertainty and make it a competitive advantage and survive and thrive over really long amounts of time if a company's been around since the 1700s. So can you start off by telling us about that project?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. So here's sort of the crazy thing is I started this project back in 2018 and 2019. And honestly, all I was trying to do was help people get through an economic recession. I never saw the pandemic coming. But you probably had the same experience. You know, you're talking to meeting planners, you're talking to organizers, and you're asking how things are. And everybody's saying the same thing. Oh my gosh, it's great. We're poised to have our best year on record. But this uncertainty. And that just got me thinking, like, as if everybody was waiting for the bottom to drop out. And why did uncertainty always have to be a negative? Why did it always have to be a bad thing? And what if we could help people flip the script on that? What if they could start to see uncertainty as opportunity, as actually something you needed to show up in your organization to cause disruption so that you could really go to another level? And then I thought, I've got to prove that. And so I set out to find businesses and organizations that had done that. I found 9. And the fascinating thing about the 9 is 7 are family owned. They're not even large corporations, and they're still here. They've come through world wars, economic depression, and they've even survived now their second pandemic. And from that, I wrote a 9-step formula for what it takes, if you follow it step by step, to thrive in an uncertain marketplace.
So I absolutely love this idea of uncertainty as opportunity. When you said that, I immediately took out my trusty free throwaway pen and wrote that down, because I mean, uncertainty's been sort of the word of the last 10 or 12 months. And I think we all need to look at that as opportunity. So we don't have time to go through all 9 of those tips, but can you share kind of an overview of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you the other thing too is if anybody goes to my website, which is valuespeaker.com, just valuespeaker.com, there's a purple bar at the top called Emerge Successful. If you click on that, there's 9 videos there with all 9 steps. I can just highlight a couple of my favorites. I know Eliz wants to dive into one of them, but one of my favorites is condition yourself for change. Is that you have to proactively see change coming rather than wait for change to show up. You have to control the change in the marketplace rather than them controlling you. Relevancy to add value. It's really securing your base and how you grow sales and expand in an uncertain marketplace. And we'll dive in more to that one in a minute. Build your network, change your life. And shed fast and keep moving. What you did in January won't be good enough to grow your conferences, events, and meetings and membership in June of this year. So we dive into the stories of how those businesses really did that. Then we give you the tools and resources to apply it to your own organization.
So you really quick touched on build your network and change your life. And this is something that I've been teaching audiences for 15 years. And I have a real belief that associations and companies have not just the ability, but the responsibility now as we emerge from this pandemic, which may take another year or more. As we emerge out, they have a responsibility to help people re-engage and reinstall and reconnect with other humans.
Yeah, when we were doing the research, both the data as well as the interviews, it came out over and over again that the organizations leaders that really emerged successful were the ones who not only continued to build their network, but they harnessed that network. I always like to say, and Tom, you're passionate about this too, any problem, any challenge you are having, you are only one connection away from somebody who can help you solve it, who can open a door, who can give you the answer. And the stories in the book about this are electric. I mean, it's people really faced unbelievable obstacles, and the power of the network is what pulled them through.
Well, I think that's so smart. And one of the things that I know, one of my favorite topics is uncertainty. So we have a lot of synergy on this.
Yeah, we do.
One of the things that I know happens when we're sitting in uncertainty is that we pull back. That's a self-protection. Like we start to feel vulnerable and we're like, but what you're saying is we should be doing the exact opposite and really banking on our network and not hiding behind, like, no, I'm fine. And I think for our meeting industry professionals, that's a really great message. I know when Tom and I hosted the SpinCon conference, there was a whole thing about, no, you can't say you're fine. You have to be open enough. One of the things that I can also recommend that Meridith has this, what do we call it? The quick start strategy for thriving in uncertainty, which I downloaded and read, and it has red circles on it. One of the things that I want to talk about is your number 4, add value to secure your base. And for our meeting professionals who are looking at an association, I would think that's a very poignant strategy right now.
Yeah. This is my favorite strategy and my favorite story from the book. So I'm so glad that you had circled it, read. Because one of the things that we think in an uncertain environment is, number one, we can't grow and we can't expand. And it's one of the best times to grow and to expand. But it's not about going after new membership. It is about focusing on your existing membership. And let me tell you why. I call it securing your base. That's why it's the strategy, is because if you add value to your existing membership, they're going to go out and spread the word to everybody else. In an uncertain environment, you grow from the inside out. Now, the way you secure your base is you begin by interviewing them, by just reaching out to every member you've got and asking them questions. Tell me what's going on in your organization. What were you focused on in 2020? How did you finish out? If you could do one thing in 2021 to really help you, what would that be? In those answers, they're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to add value to their lives, which will grow your association. It's about being relevant. I'm just going to tell you a really quick story. One of the companies that I highlighted for the book was Procter & Gamble. Now, little do people know, P&G was started by two men who married sisters in the early 1800s. One made candles and one made soap. And their future father-in-law said, boys, why don't you quit competing with each other, because they both needed animal fat to make their products, and form a company. And P&G was born. Now, the first product they wanted to put on the market was soap. I don't care what you sell out there. There is no product more commoditized than soap. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you get market share when you sell soap? Procter & Gamble's entire company is rooted in this idea of securing their base. They don't release a product that they don't interview their existing customers first. And when they went out and asked people about soap, what people said was, we love it, we'll buy it. But the problem with soap is when you use it, you lather up and it slips out of your hands and it goes to the bottom of the bathtub. That was their opportunity. That's where they found relevancy. They created Ivory Soap, their first branded soap. And if anybody remembers from being a kid, it is the soap that floats. They just injected it with air. Now, here's the thing is by the end of the 1800s, Procter & Gamble was $1 million company. All because they focused on relevancy. You need to add value by understanding the problems that your members face right now. Don't sit in a room and brainstorm those. Talk to them. They're going to tell you what they need. They're going to tell you it in the language that you want. Procter & Gamble didn't change the language. They just used exactly what their customers told them, and that's what they marketed. I love that strategy, and I promise you, it will make you more valuable to your existing members, and that will grow your association to the next level.
So Meridith, I have a client who his association has grown over the last 10 months. He's the executive director of an association. And the way he grew it was he said, look, we can't do our live conferences. And he took the line item for speakers at his live conferences, which was a healthy line item. And once a month, he brought in not just anybody to do a webinar, but he brought in and he was able to negotiate speakers because it was an hour webinar versus a larger travel type thing. Every month for 10 months, he brought in key people to provide extreme value. And he said, I tightened my belt in a lot of areas, but I went out to get people to come in and talk about things that my members said they needed. And then at the end of the year, he had all 10 of us who spoke come back and do sort of a recap at the end of the year. And when I was talking to him after the recap, he said that not only was the recap the best attended, everybody wanted to hear like the little snippets from everybody throughout the year, but he said that his membership had grown by something like 50% during the pandemic because of the value he provided.
Yeah, it's really, it's really amazing is that you don't want to skip over asking people what they need. One, they want to be heard. The second is they'll tell you how to grow your organization. And the biggest challenge I see is that people are still selling what they sold before COVID. And even if your product is the same, how it needs to be positioned in the marketplace needs to be different because the challenges that your customers are facing, your members are facing, they're different now.
I'm running that around in my brain. There's a lot of times on this show where my brain is working on two levels. I'm like, oh, that's a really good insight for our meeting professional colleagues. I'm on the board of my NSA chapter. I'm like, ooh, that is a really good thing that I need to take back to the board. And then I'm at my business going, well, there's a to-do list item. Talk to my people. That seems like a good idea. All right.
Yeah, it's so simple, right?
It is, but it's also probably something very few of us do.
Yeah,
Because
I
we're
would
too
agree.
busy running our business to actually grow our business.
Yeah, I would agree. I do a survey out to my client base every 3 months now. I
Hmm.
did that once I got through the research on the book, and I just asked three questions. I'll throw three questions out there because I want to make sure that I'm staying aware of what's going on with them. And I'm very transparent about it. I just say, look, I'm looking to stay relevant, cutting edge, and making sure I'm doing what I need to do to really serve you. Tell me where you are in these three buckets. This survey will take you 3 minutes. And
Hmm.
I get back, titles for blogs, titles for keynotes, titles for programs I need to be making, because they're telling me what they need and how I
Mm-hmm.
need to stay relevant, in the marketplace. Again, I just love that story of Procter and Gamble because you talk about a strategy they have stuck to since the
Mm-hmm.
1800s. You can see when women started going into the workforce, they were one of the first companies to get there with products that were easier to use and things because women were saying, I'm working and taking care of my family. You've got to make this simpler. It's just so smart.
It is very, very smart. Let's move on to another one of my favorite tip or strategies on uh, this quick start is keep moving. Um,
Yeah.
tell us what that is.
It is strategy number 8. And I will say that when you get these strategies, you have to understand they have to be done in order and you can't
Mm.
miss a single strategy. When I started researching the book, Brooks Brothers was one of the companies that qualified that I'd done a lot of research on. But right at the beginning of the pandemic, they declared bankruptcy.
Mm.
And they violated two of the strategies. Number one is they did not remain relevant to their marketplace, and the other is
Mm-hmm.
they violated shed fast and keep moving. So I included them in the book as this is why you have to do them all.
Ah.
But shed fast and keep moving means that the way that you did business in January can't be the way you do business in June, can't be the way you do business in November. There is more happening outside of your organization than in it, outside of your association than in it, that can impact your success. And as a leader, you need to be paying attention to those external forces and objectively look at your organization and ask yourself. I use a tool called a seeds, a weeds, and a needs.
Mm.
And I ask my clients, I say, every quarter, I want you just to look at your business. I want you to take an hour, just get a group of people together, and I just want you to brainstorm and
Mm-hmm.
see what did you do last quarter that really worked? What grew your business? What do you need to be doing more of? And there are things that you did that you're not even aware of that really got you traction. Like I can tell you in my business last quarter, I switched from email over to the telephone. I went back to the
Mm.
telephone and it's really getting me traction. My emails, I think, are getting caught in spams or just not working. But when I got to the telephone, I'm getting a lot better connection.
Mm.
Weeds are what's weighing you down. What do you need to stop doing that isn't working? What isn't
Mm.
productive? Now, what's important about this is often people interpret this as I'm doing something wrong. It's not that you're doing something wrong. It's just understanding that think how much your world has changed from March of last year to this year. I mean,
Mm.
it's crazy how much has changed. So the very fact that maybe your market's open now, maybe it got closed again, maybe you serve the education system and now the schools are open, or I don't know, but so much moved that you really have to ask yourself, what isn't working? What do we need to stop doing? And of course, needs are what do you need to start doing that you're not that will make you more productive? And I'll just give you a great example of that is I was doing one of these on mine last year and I felt like I was really busy, but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't productive. And what I noticed was I had a lot of time on my calendar that I was engaging with people, but it wasn't as productive as it needed to be. So I felt like one thing I needed to do was color code my calendar. And green meant revenue generation, red meant transforming my business. Everything else got peach and said that I was wasting my time. Because what I found was I wasn't doing enough to take my business to the next level. I wasn't creating time to actually transform my business. So what I needed to do was color code my calendar so I could see how much time I was devoting to it. So that's just how the tool works. I just can't emphasize enough that the companies, it's kind of the difference between a Netflix and a Blockbuster, right? Mm-hmm. Netflix objectively looks at the business and says, what isn't getting us traction, and lets it go and moves on. Blockbuster believed that what they were doing internally would sustain their growth, and it just didn't work. So you have to be looking externally.
So, Meridith, you speak a lot to sales teams. It's one of the niches that you have. When people are really focusing on how do I increase sales, and yet they're living inside a pandemic and all of this uncertainty, what can the individual salespeople do, or the sales manager on up do to help drive new revenue?
Yeah, well, number one is, before you do anything else, you really do have to be relevant in the marketplace. That's the first place I see it derail. Are you selling the right thing? And are you solving the right problems? Nothing else is going to work if you don't do that piece first. The second is, you need to understand that your traditional ways that you've got prospects, they're gone. I'm certainly not taking people to play golf. I'm not going to a trade show. I'm not speaking on a stage to get leads really, anymore. It's just not the exact same with virtual. So you have really, once you understand that relevancy, you better really have a strong plan to raise your thought leadership in the marketplace. I call it making noise. Just this morning, I had a sales call for a conference I'm going to do in a couple of weeks. And the way she found me was she buried herself in 4 speakers' LinkedIn profiles. And she felt like she understood who I was and what I had to offer by everything out there on LinkedIn. So you have to understand that, that people are over 65% of the way through the buying decision before they ever interact with you. So you've got to raise that. Don't just put stuff out there on social media. It has to be relevant. It has to be solving that problem. And from there, you need to go back to just the traditional sales calls. I cannot emphasize enough, you have to be selling right now. You have to devote the time to picking up the phone, sending the emails. And you know me, I'm passionate about the follow-up. And I love that I'm on here today because I have declared a sales follow-up month. February is sales follow-up month. And I just self-proclaimed it. I made it a national holiday month. But because we start out of the gate in January calling people, and then we drop the ball. But what is your plan to touch back with these people all year long? The chances that you're going to interact with somebody at the exact moment they're ready to buy, they're slim to none. So you better be staying visible. And I use a 70-30 split. 70% of my contact is value add. I'm just giving them things to make their lives easier. 30% is me asking for business. But it has to be that 3-pronged approach. You've got to be relevant. Please, if you don't take anything else from me today, understand you have got to solve the right problem.
So I love this idea of February being proclaimed sales follow-up month, because I find with myself too, I'm not throwing other people under the bus, but even with myself, I find that follow-up is an area where a lot of people don't do a good job. And so if somebody's listening to this, Eliz is saying her too, we all do it. So if someone's listening to this and they have a team, and it doesn't matter what industry they're in, and they're like, oh, that was the golden nugget of this interview, what can they do to make their company embrace February and maybe every month as sales follow-up month?
Well, somebody said, Meridith, can you do that? Can you make February sales follow-up month? I said, well, I just did. So I think
I proclaimed in 2015, I made it the year of the handwritten note. Now, it didn't get picked up on the Today Show, but all year long, I made 2015 the year of the handwritten note.
Okay, well, if you can do that, I could make my
Totally.
sales follow. So first of all, I'm going to give you a couple of tips, and then no, I'm releasing a video every single week. Again, you can find it on my website of what
Ah.
you do to build your follow up strategy. They come out on Thursdays, but you can always find them on my website. But number one is you need to back up and get really clear on your client avatar. Don't waste time following up with people who do not fit into your ideal client. Why? Because any outreach you do is the most expensive sales call you are ever going to make. I'm spending my time, I am spending my resources, and I'm probably getting nothing from it for a while. So you aim at the right target. From there, you need to strategize the system. And what I mean by that is if you are going to reach out every single month to these people, what are you going to reach out with? And I like to plan that ahead of time because the moment you have to think, you'll stall the sales process. So if you came home with me and you got up with me, in the morning, you would see I look nothing like this, but you would see that I sit down in front of my sales follow-up system. And I know every day who I'm calling on and what I'm supposed to send them. So I have decided what my 70% value adds are, and I have decided where in the year I'm going to ask them for business. Now that ebbs and flows depending on, if I get a hold of them, if we're actively talking about something, but you want to go ahead and lay that out so you don't have to think about it. Just go ahead and give yourself a weekend and plan it out. The third thing I'm going to tell you is then you need to really divide your contacts into your A, B's, and C's. I like to start with a list of 100 people I'm going to reach out and I'm going to follow up with all year long. I create my 100 prospect list. Doesn't have to be that. It can be 30, it can be 50, whatever you want to do. But then I divide them into A, B's, and C's. My A's are we have had some kind of contact. Maybe Eliz connected me to them last year and I forgot to follow up, or something. My B's are I have maybe I'm connected to them on LinkedIn, but we've never really had a conversation. And C's are people who've never heard of me and I've got to start from scratch. So then I take those A, B's, and C's and I'm going to my A's, I'm going to contact a little bit more often. My C's, I'll probably contact every quarter. But those are some things that you can do. What I want to say is this is not about perfection. It doesn't have to be right. Just start. Doesn't matter. Progress is where is where it gets better. Just do it. Some days I follow up with the most beautiful pieces of stuff, and sometimes I'm just trying to check a box. But I believe in consistency and doing it day in and day out. And the last thing I'm going to say is I do it first thing in the morning because the energy that I want to put out into the universe is that I am looking for business and I am ready to receive it. So it's the first thing I do every day is follow up. I will say one more thing because I obviously can't shut up about this. When you build that list, please go back last year and just look at anybody who reached out to you or you lost the deal at the 11th hour and include them. I get more business because I didn't get picked the first time. And I'm like, oh, I don't go away. And you'll eventually decide you need me. And I'm going to stay in the game until you do.
Such good advice, because that is so true. And that's true for companies. It's true for associations who had people who were nibbling around to become a member and didn't. Maybe next year is the right time. It's true for everybody. Somebody told me once that you can't die and go to heaven. It still won't get you off their mailing list.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's, for associations, I think it's really good for sponsors. I know a lot of sponsors get really wonky last year as you were trying to figure out your whole virtual approach. Now you've got it down. You know what the value is. This is a great time to go back this year with those types of things. So the follow-up system, begin with the relevancy, use the relevancy to really make noise in the marketplace. Then from there, you have laid the groundwork so that people have heard of you and about you, so that when you start making the calls, then it's going to be a lot easier lift to get through the door.
Wow.
So freaking smart.
I think we could do like 3 hours of just interviewing Meridith rather than just 30 minutes. This was awesome.
Yes.
Eliz, make a note. We're only going to interview people born on June 8th from this day forward, because that was awesome.
Okay. Because it's actually evidently a magical birthday.
It's a magical day to be born.
That's
I
right.
think.
I
So,
do.
hey, Meridith.
Yeah, I really do want. I just want to say, I want people, please don't worry about perfection with any of these. Just start and it will come, I promise.
So if somebody is
thank
out
you
there
so
thinking,
much.
yeah, if they're thinking they need some more Meridith, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I would love that. Just like Tom, I am a passionate believer. Build your network, change your life. So if you reach out to me and connect, I will definitely connect with you. You can find me at valuespeaker.com, just the words valuespeaker.com. Again, the purple bar at the top is full of free tools and resources, including all 9 steps to emerge successful. You can find me on all the social media channels, but I tend to live on LinkedIn.
Nice. Well, thank you so much again for being here. This was awesome, and it's the exact reason that Eliz and I say all the time that an in-depth interview can be so much better than a talking head over PowerPoint, because you delivered today so many pieces of information that, I mean, must have filled half a notebook for the people taking notes.
Well, thank you. It was a real honor to be here, and I just love you guys and love what you're doing.
Thanks so much. We will be back next week, Monday and Wednesday, with some great guests. On Monday, I am bringing Mark Ensign, who is from Loudmouse. He, in full disclosure, he does my website, but he is one of those people, when you have worked hard as I have and created something new, and then you look at your marketing materials and think, those aren't good anymore. Somebody who can help you make that shift. And Tom, I know you've invited somebody on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, we're going to have Jonathan from Excel Events. And, we talk about in this season, how do you communicate your value? Imagine having to communicate your value as an online portal, as an online events platform. There's a lot of competition out there, and he is doing a great job. So I'm looking forward to a conversation with him as well.
Well, you can find us, all of these recordings, on our Facebook page. You can find that easily at webinartalkshow.live. And you can find us with all the information about how Tom and I work with meeting professionals and associations to do this kind of thing for your event at webinartalkshow.com. Meridith, thanks so much for being with us. We've had just a blast, and I too have a notebook full of notes.
Well, thank you. It's been great to be here.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.